Welcome to this Pixies Hill webcast on number lines, intervals and graphs. First, we'll look at what a number line is, why do we use number lines, and how do we use number lines. A number line is a really powerful tool that helps pupils to visualize key mathematical ideas. There are different types of number line. We have closed and complete, as in the top example, closed and partly complete in the second example with the fractions, closed with the start and end point, and finally, at the bottom, we have open number lines. We teach number lines because they support pupils to develop a strong number sense. They help children understand measurement and scale. They prepare for working with graphs, data, and more complex maths, and provide visual representations to aid understanding. Children are first introduced to number lines in Key Stage 1. The intervals on number lines help to visualize the order and spacing between numbers. They are given examples to support with adding and subtracting. The top example shows how, when we begin on the number 3 and count up 4 or add 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, we land on the number 7. So 3 add 4 equals 7. The example below shows a subtraction calculation. So for 8 subtract 3, we begin on the 8 and we count back 3 jumps, finding our answer of 5. 2, 3, and here is our answer of 5. In Year 2, number lines are very closely linked with learning to tell the time. After all, a clock is, at its most basic, a number line from 1 to 12 presented in a circular format. In Year 3, pupils build on their learning from Key Stage 1 by using number lines to add and subtract efficiently. These examples show how we might compare making 6 descending jumps of 10 with subtracting to the nearest 100. In this case, a descending jump of 30 and then another jump back of 30. By making these comparisons on the number lines, children can decide which method is most efficient for them. Number lines are also used to support pupils' understanding of equivalent fractions. By looking for fractions that are in line with each other, children can see fractions which are equal or equivalent. When using number lines for this purpose, it is absolutely vital that the 0 and the 1 must be aligned. When children move into Year 4, they continue to use number lines in several ways, including estimating, rounding, mixed numbers, improper fractions, and decimals. In this example, children are asked to show an approximate position of 8,640,000. They would first be required to work out the intervals on the number line, and as there is a difference of 1 million between each end of the number line labelled, and there are 10 intervals, we know that the intervals are ascending in 100,000s. After this, it is a case of deciding which two intervals the given number would be between and approximately where within that interval it would go. So in this example, it's going to be between 8,600,000 and 8,700,000. So between these two intervals here. Now we know that 8,650,000 is the halfway point, and as 8,640,000 is slightly smaller than that, it would be slightly to the left, perhaps somewhere about here. In this example, we have number lines showing one whole. The intervals on this number line are worth 1/6 each, and labelled we have 1/6 and 4/6. Children would be expected to label where 2/6, 3/6 or 5/6 would go on the number line in these spaces here. In the next example, we have improper fractions. Now this is being used so that children can compare improper fractions on the top with mixed numbers. As we can see on this, 7/3 is equivalent to 2 and 1/3. 8/3 is equivalent to 2 and 2/3. So the children would be expected to fill in the gaps based on the information given, as improper fractions above the line and mixed numbers below. This enables children to see the relationship between improper fractions and mixed numbers. This final example is showing decimals and would require children to work out what each interval is before using this information to continue the number line. So for example, the difference between 4.1 and 4.4 is 0.3. So each interval is adding on 0.3. So we would add that on to this number to find the next interval. Number lines continue to be used in years 5 and 6. They are used here to introduce the concept of negative numbers, show negative numbers as a reflection of positive numbers, build on rounding, and introduce ratios and solve ratio problems by adding or multiplying. Number lines are often found in various disguises throughout the curriculum. I've already mentioned that clocks are effectively a number line from 1 to 12, and other units of measurement are also shown on variations on the number line. Additional examples that we can see here are a ruler, a protractor, a thermometer, or measuring jog, which all have number lines with set intervals on. They're also present on statistical representations such as bar charts and line graphs. As I have just mentioned graphs, let's cover those now. So, what is a graph? Why do we use them? And how do we use them in school? Graphs are essentially read in the same way as number lines, but along the x and y axis. Children are taught to read the intervals on each axis, read and interpret data from graphs, choose sensible scales when drawing their own graphs, and estimate values between marked points. In Year 3, the focus is on interpreting bar charts, so reading the data presented and using this to answer questions. For example, here you might ask how many more children had a dog than a hamster. For this, children would apply their knowledge of number lines to read the y-axis. They could then either calculate the difference between 6 and 2, alternatively, they could count up or back along the y-axis as they did on number lines in previous years. 1, 2, 3, 4. To draw bar charts, children are taught to read the data presented and then use the intervals shown on the y-axis to plot their chart correctly. When they reach Year 4, pupils move on to comparison, sum and difference problems using data presented in graphs or charts. These are based on the same principles as those in Year 3, namely to read the intervals and scales. They're also taught to interpret line graphs and draw line graphs. Children are taught to decide the intervals to use and choose an appropriate scale. They are also taught that dotted lines are used to join 2 points on a graph where we can't be certain of the exact values in between. In Year 5 and 6, pupils continue to draw line graphs and read and interpret them. The complexity increases, however, as line graphs with 2 lines and dual bar charts are introduced, as shown in these 2 examples here. Thank you for watching this webinar on number lines, intervals and graphs. Please get in touch if you have any further questions.